I want to start with the stories of victims because they're the reason why I'm here, they're the reason why we do this work. And in order to understand this fight, you have to connect to the stories of victims first. There was a 15-year-old girl from Broward County, Florida, and she was missing for an entire year. She was finally found when her distraught mother was tipped off by a Pornhub user that he recognized her daughter on the site. And she was found in 58 videos being raped and trafficked for profit. The man who was raping her in his apartment, his face was matched from surveillance footage from a 7-Eleven to the videos on Pornhub. And they were able to locate the girl in his apartment. They rescued her, he had impregnated her, and her life will never, ever be the same. This is Serena Fleites from Bakersfield, California. And as an innocent 13-year-old girl, she had never kissed a boy before. She was a straight A student, but she had a crush on a boy a year older than her, who coerced her and convinced her to send him some nude images and videos of herself. And before anybody victim blames Serena, just know how absolutely common it is in our digital age that young people are sharing nude images and videos of themselves all the time. Thorn says it's a leading child protection agency in the US, and they did a study and they found that 1 in 7 9 to 12-year-old children has shared a nude image or video of themselves, 9 to 12 years old. But this video got shared with her, with this boy, and then he shared it with his classmates. It got uploaded to Pornhub, where it was downloaded and uploaded. Again, it was viewed millions of times. And she would beg Pornhub to take these videos down, and they would ignore her. And if they did respond, they would hassle her. Prove to us that you're a victim. Prove that you're a child in this video, that you're underage. And even if she did get it down, it would just get uploaded again. And it was this spiral of trauma and despair. And she ended up being shamed and bullied. She dropped out of school. She got addicted to drugs to try to numb the pain. She tried to kill herself multiple times. And this is very common with victims of image-based sexual abuse. They say the ideation rate for these victims is 50% for suicide ideation. She then wound up homeless, living out of a car. And that was Serena. That's not the end of her story. We'll come back to it. There was a 12-year-old boy from Alabama who was drugged and overpowered and raped by a man named Rocky Shea Franklin. And Rocky filmed this abuse, and he uploaded 23 of these videos to Pornhub for profit, in a profit-sharing relationship with the website. When police found out about this, of course, they immediately arrested Rocky, but they also went to Pornhub demanding that these videos come down, and they were ignored for 7 months. They reached out multiple times. They were ignored while these videos continued to earn profit for the executives of Pornhub. Rocky was sentenced to 40 years in prison for what he did. And it's not just with girls, right? Boys are being abused on these sites all the time. There were 2 young boys in the UK who were lured to a predator's house, and he actually physically assaulted them to the point where they had brain bleeding, they had brain injuries, and he raped them and uploaded the videos to Pornhub, again, for profit. The Sunday Times did an investigation, and they found dozens of illegal videos on Pornhub within minutes, even children as young as 3 years old. And it wasn't only children who were ending up on Pornhub. This is Nicole Armando, and she's from New York. And she was being raped and abused by her partner for years. And he was torturing her, sexually torturing her, and uploading the videos to Pornhub. She ultimately killed him in self-defense, but she was sentenced to life in prison. Thankfully, she had a good legal team who reduced her sentence to 7 years, and she's finally out today. But these stories, I mean, they were shocking. And victims say that when their abuse is uploaded to a site like Pornhub, they call it the immortalization of their trauma, where they understand that these images and videos will live on for profit and for pleasure long after they're gone. One victim said this. She said, "My abuser put me in a mental prison, but Pornhub gave me a life sentence." Now, this might seem shocking to many people, considering that at the beginning of the fight against Pornhub in 2020, they were the 5th most visited website across the entire internet, with more visits than Netflix, Amazon, and Yahoo. Pornhub had 170 million visits per day, 62 billion visits per year, and enough content uploaded every single year, it would take 169 years to watch if you put those videos back to back. That's not counting the images that were being uploaded to Pornhub. Pornhub is a behemoth, right? Researchers named Pornhub the 3rd most influential tech company on global society, just behind Facebook and Google. Now, Pornhub was a household name. It was a cultural icon. They had billboards in Times Square. They were walking New York Fashion Week. They had faux commercials on Saturday Night Live. People are wearing their apparel proudly in public. They are a household name, the cheeky brand for porn. Everybody knows the Pornhub jingle. But there's a parent company that nobody knew about that owned Pornhub, and that was MindGeek. And with a $362 million loan, a German entrepreneur named Fabian Tillman, you'll hear about again in a moment, basically rolled up the entire global mainstream porn industry under one company. He estimated he owned 80% of the world's most popular porn sites and brands and subscription sites. And Pornhub is the flagship site, the cash cow of this company. And these are the YouTube, so the tube sites. Pornhub, it's a tube site. It's a YouTube of porn. This is user-generated content where anybody in the world who has a camera or an iPhone could become a pornographer and can film a sex act and could upload it online. And one night in early 2020, it was February 1st of 2020, in the context of about 15 years at that time in the fight against sex trafficking and child sexual abuse, I had been researching the intersection between sex trafficking and the big porn industry. And I call it big porn because it's real. It's big. It's an industry like big pharma, like big tobacco. There's big porn. And I had been reading these stories in the news that I just shared with you about that 15-year-old girl and some of these others, Nicole Armando. And I was haunted with a question. I was up late that night comforting my 3-month-old baby who had a birth complication and was crying in the night. And I was up and I was thinking about that story of the 15-year-old girl. And at the time, we were all just assuming that this was, legal and consensual material, mostly on these sites. They had done such a good job at presenting this facade to the world. They even had an arm of Pornhub called Pornhub Cares, where they would do all this philanthropic work, like save the oceans and save the bees, and they were donating to breast cancer awareness and research efforts and things like that, and getting tons of press, spending millions of dollars. So everybody kind of assumed that this was a legitimate brand. But my father was a very wise man, and he often said, assumption is the mother of all screw-ups. And what if that assumption was wrong? And that phrase came to mind to me that night, and a light bulb went on. And I thought, why don't I test the upload system to find out what it takes to upload to Pornhub? How did I never think of this before? So I put my baby down after he fell asleep, and I took out my laptop and my keyboard, and I just took a video of the rug in the room and the keyboard laptop, and I went to upload. And guess what? There were no barriers to upload. In under 10 minutes, anybody, just with an email address, could upload to Pornhub. They were not, with a VPN, anonymously, anybody could upload. No check of ID. So they refused to verify age. They would not check an ID to make sure that these were not children in the videos. They refuse to verify consent to make sure these are not rape or trafficking victims. And I quickly realized that Pornhub was not a porn site. It was actually a crime scene. And it was infested with videos of real sexual crime. I understood that the servers of Pornhub could likely be the largest repository of child abuse, rape, and trafficking in North America, if not the entire world. And all of this was monetized content. It was making money for the owners of Pornhub. It's free porn, but it was heavily monetized. And that's why it constituted trafficking. A lot of people don't really understand the definition of trafficking and what makes rape trafficking. It's the commercialization of it that makes rape trafficking, that makes child sexual abuse trafficking. So anytime a child is used in a video that's commercialized or monetized, that's an act of trafficking. Any non-consensual sex act that is commercialized and monetized, and every single video on Pornhub was heavily monetized with ads around the videos, ads when you press pause in the videos, before the videos and after the videos. This is how they were making money. That's the free porn business model. But I was compelled to sound the alarm on this injustice. I could not believe what I discovered, what millions of people already knew, but nobody had sounded a noticeable alarm on yet. And so I took to Twitter. Like, that was the only thing I really could do in that moment. I had a few thousand followers and years of advocacy. And I said, Pornhub is a trafficking hub. I started the hashtag Trafficking Hub. I told people about the upload process and people were horrified. I wrote an op-ed. I submitted it to like 7 different outlets. One of them accepted it. I was glad that it happened. And that got out there in the Washington Examiner. And people couldn't believe that this was happening. And one of the people who read the article reached out to me and said, you need to start a petition to shut down Pornhub. And because that was the call to action on Twitter, is shut down Pornhub. It's a trafficking hub. And I said, okay, I'll do that. So I went on change.org. I started a petition. I shared it. It started to go viral instantly. Today, we have 2.3 million people who signed the petition from every country in the world, but it started to take off. So today, this is higher now. It's 500 million views on social media. So we have 500 million views of content on social media exposing Pornhub. 600 organizations have joined the fight to shut down Pornhub from 65 countries. Thousands of media pieces have been written exposing Pornhub. And as all this was happening, all this was going viral, the most amazing thing was happening. Victims were seeing these posts on social media. They were seeing the petition. They were seeing the news stories. And they began to reach out to me and say, this happened to me. My videos are on Pornhub. I'm a child in my video and I can't get it down. Many of them were suicidal at the time that they would reach out. And adult victims, young victims, teen victims, mostly teen victims, right, underage teens were reaching out. And not only that, but whistleblowers from inside the company, moderators who worked on the moderating team, and company executives were reaching out, trying to expose what was going on inside this company. And through all of that, I not only learned how this abuse was ending up on Pornhub, but why it was ending up on Pornhub. And it was the free porn business model, because free porn is not free. It comes with a huge human cost. But it's heavily monetized. Like I said, they were selling 4.6 billion ad impressions on Pornhub every single day. Think about that. 4.6 billion daily on Pornhub. And that's because on these sites, content is king. Like, this is what the insiders from the company revealed, that content is king. Like, they need to have massive amounts of content in order to drive those Google searches, to have inventory on the internet, to drive massive amounts of traffic to the site to watch those and click on those videos and those ads. And because of that, they intentionally hardly had any moderation practice. So they had 30 moderators working in Cyprus, 10 per shift, clicking through up to 2,000 videos per 8-hour shift, just guessing who is 15 and who's 18, what's rough sex and what's rape, And they were guessing wrong all the time if they even took the time to look at the videos. We found out one person, now imagine this, one person out of 1,800 employees. Like, this is a huge company. It's a multinational company with offices all over the world. And they hired one person 5 days a week to review videos flagged by users as illegal content, including child abuse and rape. They had a backlog of 706,000 videos, and they had a policy on purpose that said that they wouldn't even put a video in line for review unless it had 15 flags. That means a victim would have to flag their video over 15 times for anybody to even put it in line for review. They were ignoring the police. They were ignoring victims. They weren't even reporting known child abuse to authorities for 13 years. Imagine how many children could have been rescued if they were reporting, but they didn't want bad news in the press because that would damage their reputation. And as all of this information was coming forward, we were learning so much. We were getting it out there, but we knew it had to go bigger. And so we reached out to two-time Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist from the New York Times, Nick Kristof, who had a history of reporting on child sexual abuse and human trafficking, very compassionately, very powerful journalism. And I reached out to him, and he was a little interested in the story, but wasn't sure if he was going to do anything yet. And then we had another long conversation, and I ended up by saying, I need you to see what I'm seeing on this site. Because at the time, people from all over the world, as this was going viral, like users from all different countries around the world, when they would see an illegal video of rape, they would send me the link. And I would click on that link. I had a responsibility to these victims to witness these crime scenes, to report them, to document what was going on. And it was pervasive. It was everywhere, all over the site. And I said, you have to see this for yourself. Like, don't just take my word for it. And I sent him some links and some hashtags I knew would take him down what I call the hellhole of rape. It was some of the worst videos I've ever seen. One of them was of a young Asian woman who was drugged, and she was so absolutely unconscious. Her body is limp, and her abuser is a masked assailant, and he is actually lifting her eyelids and he's touching her eyes to prove that she's non-responsive, tickling her feet. And it was one of the worst things I'd ever seen. But the algorithm on Pornhub, if you saw something like that, it wanted you to see more. So the algorithm would then serve up more and more and more. And I call it the hellhole of rape. And I sent him down this hellhole of rape with these hashtags. And after he saw that, he said, I have to do this story. I cannot not do this story. And he spent 6 months investigating, talking to victims, and he released this groundbreaking article called The Children of Pornhub, featuring Serena's story and the story of so many other children who were abused. And he ended it with these powerful words. The world has often been oblivious to child sexual abuse, from the Catholic Church to the Boy Scouts. Too late. We prosecute individuals like Jeffrey Epstein or R. Kelly. But we should also stand up to corporations that systematically exploit children. With Pornhub, we have Jeffrey Epstein times 1,000. And at that time, we had been pressuring the credit card companies for a year to cut ties, because we knew that at the end of the day, this was about money for Pornhub and its executives. And through all of this, the former owner of Pornhub actually reached out saying he wanted to help. Now, he had ulterior motives, but one of the things that he said was, if you want to take down Pornhub, go after the credit card companies. That's the only thing that they care about. So we were battling with the credit card executives of Visa and MasterCard for a year, and they were resisting and resisting and resisting. But when this article came out, the pressure was on. Thousands of follow-on pieces, and journalists were calling up Visa and MasterCard and Discover and saying, why are you still doing business with this rape factory, this Pornhub crime scene? And days after that, MasterCard, Visa, and Discover joined PayPal in cutting all ties with the site, leaving them only with cryptocurrency as a payment option. Then, in a panic, Pornhub did the unthinkable because this was their worst nightmare. This was the worst thing that could ever happen to them. They said, we're going to delete all of our unverified content. They took down 80% of the entire website in 24 hours. 10 million videos and 30 million images disappeared in what Financial Times called probably the biggest takedown of content in internet history. But we kept the pressure on, and they had to continue to take down content. And as of June 30 of this year, we estimate about 95% of Pornhub is gone. That they had to delete almost the entire website. They've had a 68% reduction in site visitors from their height in 2020 to 2025. They've lost all mainstream advertisers. Heinz and Unilever used to advertise on Pornhub. Today, not Weed Max and KY Jelly won't even advertise on Pornhub because it's so toxic. Pornhub has truly become a pariah. The CEO and the COO, who were owners of the site, were forced to resign. The secret majority shareholder of the company, who had hidden his identity from the public for years, was found and he was exposed. And today he's being sued personally by dozens of victims. In fact, today, nearly 300 victims have sued Pornhub in 27 lawsuits, including class actions representing tens of thousands of child victims. And by the way, another lawsuit will probably be filed soon. We'll have 28. Pornhub's parent company, MyGeek, they were criminally charged by the US federal government, the Eastern District of New York. And just a few weeks ago, finally, after meeting with the FTC since 2020, the FTC attorneys finally took action against Pornhub. They charged them. They've had up to $15 million in fines, and they were sold as a distressed asset. So Pornhub lost most of its value as a company, and they were sold as a distressed asset for $402 million to a company, a hastily concocted private equity firm called Ethical Capital Partners. Like, unbelievable, right? Run by, surprise, surprise, Rocco, who is a cannabis entrepreneur, and two criminal defense attorneys, Solomon Friedman and Fadi Mansour, who spent their life defending terrorists, murderers, pedophiles, and rapists. They are criminal defense attorneys who would be more appropriate, right, to represent this crime scene. They've spent, we just found out, $100 million in legal fees over the last few years. They've spent a fourth of their company value defending themselves in court. So Pornhub has faced a reckoning for sure, but this fight is not over yet because Pornhub is still online and Pornhub is not alone. Its biggest competitors have operated the same way. So the question becomes like, how do we stop this abuse across the internet? And our strategy is twofold, right? Increase risk, eliminate profitability, because this is a financial crime and these corporate traffickers, all they care about is the bottom line. We have to make the risk of continued criminal exploitation greater than the benefit that these executives get by maintaining the status quo. We do that through continued public pressure initiatives, shine a light on this injustice, expose the truth again and again and again, and not only for the bad actors, but also their enablers, right? The credit card companies, the hosting companies, the search engines, the funders, the hedge funds. And we support and we fund strategic civil litigation, right? Because that increases risk dramatically. So today, Serena is suing the literal hell out of Pornhub. She is suing Pornhub, she's suing its owners, she's suing the hedge funds, she's suing Visa, and dozens of other minor victims are suing with her to hold them accountable. And we believe that public pressure coupled with strategic civil litigation will result in the preventive policy that we need to stop this going forward, not just government policy, but corporate policy, so that we can eventually get Visa to say, if we continue to sue Visa, right, and we continue to increase risk, eventually they'll say it's not worth it. We need to implement a global policy that disallows the use of our card on any website that distributes user-generated porn and does not verify the age and consent of every single person in every single video and image. And so that is what we're going for. And we invite you to join us on this journey because we're not going to stop until justice fully prevails.